The top story on ABC News Breakfast. 3 ABC employees are believed to have died in a helicopter crash in remote South Australia. Veteran journalist Paul Lockyer, cameraman John Bean and pilot Gary Ticehurst were flying over Lake Eyre around 7:30 last night when the crash happened.
Police have now located the wreckage. It's not known what caused the crash, but there have been reports of bad weather in that area. Now, very shortly, we'll be joined by the ABC's Managing Director, Mark Scott, on what is a difficult day for all of us here at the ABC, Tam.
Many heavy hearts in the ABC, both last night and today. So bear with us.
Yeah, it's one thing to, although we're saying they are believed to have died, we are going to speak to authorities on their way or at the site of the helicopter crash. But they are 3 of the best in the corporation. Paul Lockyer, an esteemed television journalist, one of the ABC's finest, if not one of the country's finest TV journalists. John Bean, a terrific cameraman, great bloke, and Gary Ticehurst, a great helicopter pilot and the passer on of many reassuring words to nervous journalists travelling with him over the years. Mark Scott joins us now from Sydney. Mark, good morning. As I said, a difficult day for all of us here at the ABC. It's one thing to lose one of our best, but to lose 3 in one fell swoop is just almost unthinkable.
Yes, it's been the longest of nights, and we fear it's going to be the saddest of days. We're still awaiting official confirmation out of South Australia on the death of our colleagues, but we know the ABC chopper is down. We know that police are at the scene. We know that bodies have been found, and we fear it's going to be a very sad day with the loss of these 3 outstanding colleagues, each of whom had served over 2 decades here at the ABC.
They are all outstanding in their own individual ways. Paul Lockyer, as I just said to Tam, Mark, I have known him well, worked with him most recently at the Commonwealth Games in Delhi last year. One of the finest journalists in the ABC, but also one of the best blokes you'll ever come across. Absolutely.
Everybody loved Paul. You couldn't meet a more decent, hard-working fella, and a career of over 40 years in journalism. First part of it as a distinguished foreign correspondent, but I think in these last years we've just seen a remarkable body of work from Paul. The way he's focused on regional and rural issues. They were out at Lake Eyre, and Paul, of course, did those wonderful documentaries on Lake Eyre coming to life with the rains and the water in Central Australia, and his broadcast from the floods. The only journalist in Grantham there talking about the terrible destruction there. Again, a remarkable body of work for more than 40 years in journalism from Paul Lockyer.
And looking back at that body of work, it goes back to his time as a foreign correspondent in both Asia and Washington, and of course, as many people would recall him, as the ABC's face for successive Olympic Games.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he won a Logie for his work at the Sydney Olympics, and there are a lot of journalists working that beat. Very distinguished body of work he put together there. And then, of course, went to Athens, went to Beijing, Commonwealth Games, as you said as well, Michael. And so a remarkable varied career. A great general reporter, but a fabulous communicator, and someone who's just had the ability to find compelling ways of telling important stories. And there's a certain genius you can get when you can find the simplicity on the other side of complexity. You can take a really complex story and present it in a way that everyone will appreciate and understand. And Paul's been doing that for decades on the ABC now.
John Bean, a colleague I know also very well. I worked with him some time ago in Canberra, a man who captured many marvellous images over the years.
That's right, and this is the cameraman that the reporters always clamoured to work with. A beautiful craftsman, wonderful behind the lens, and he was out filming at Lake Eyre. He'd already put together one of those great documentaries, shooting that with Paul, and they were out there capturing the magic of the outback again. A fine craftsman.
I was half joking to Tam before about going on a helicopter as a fairly nervous young journalist some time ago, and Gary Ticehurst offering many reassuring words to me. He was that sort of a fellow, wasn't he? Obviously a terrific and very skilled helicopter pilot, but the sort of reassuring person you'd like to see behind the joystick of a helicopter.
Absolutely. I mean, loved the helicopters, loved working with the newsroom, and had really set up our helicopter operation in Sydney, and had been doing that for decades. Fastidious around safety, but worked very hard at getting journalists to the places they needed to be to cover the story. So news stories, natural disasters, and also sport. I mean, Gary was obsessed by the Sydney to Hobart and would get spectacular footage tracking the fleet in his helicopter every year. And a marvellous part of the news teams that would often pull together to cover big and important stories. And everyone in the newsroom knows Gary, a much-loved, larger-than-life figure.
Mark Scott, as I said, a difficult day for all of us, from you all the way down the ranks of the ABC. Thank you very much for your time today, and we'll touch base with you a bit later on.
Thanks, Michael.